Welcome to Crunch Time Sports, where we bring you the latest sports stories in 30 minutes or less. My name is Matt Weinkoop, and back with me again is my co-host Derek Choman. Derek, how you doing?
And what's going on?
We're doing something a little different this week. We're still going to do the podcast as, the audio. We'll put that up on SoundCloud. But we're also going to do some video element from now on, just kind of put a face to the voice, I guess.
Makes sense.
You got to see our bright and shining faces. So a lot going on in sports. The big sports story this week has been the opening of NFL free agency, and a lot of big names got signed. So I guess, I don't know, maybe we'll just run through whatever big names there are. There's a lot of big moves out in the AFC West.
It's my division.
Yeah. Derek's Chargers made a lot of big moves. They signed safety Dwight Lowry, signed wide receiver Travis Benjamin, signed defensive tackle Brandon Mebane, signed corner Casey Hayward, and then they re-signed Antonio Gates. So they made a lot of big moves.
I think they're all good moves, in my opinion. Antonio Gates is a big re-signing since we lost Ladarius Green. And we have the pass rush, or a nose tackle to plug up the middle, in Mebane. And Hayward was pretty good on the Packers, so we'll see how that secondary comes in the form with Jason Verrett in his second year now.
Yeah, and I think, the biggest move I think there is honestly re-signing Antonio Gates. I mean, it kind of flies under the radar, but he's such an important part of their offense. I know he's declined a little bit.
Rivers to Gates, that's
iconic. That's big, and now that you have Travis Benjamin, along with Keenan Allen, should be a pretty...
Travis Benjamin's important because Malcolm Floyd retired this year.
Right.
So that's the end of his career. So we need a deep threat.
Yeah.
There we go.
And I think that pretty much will do
that
for them.
Browns.
Yeah. Yeah, and, the Browns lost a lot of players. I have a list here of all the free agent signings. Nobody stayed with the Browns. Everybody left. And they released...
Are you surprised?
No. I mean, it's gotten bad. They ended up releasing Johnny Manziel, which, I think is in their best interest, and maybe his, but I don't think he's going to be playing anywhere. But
Kaepernick said he wants to go there.
Yeah.
The only player ever on record to say he wants to play for the Cleveland Browns.
That's very true. I don't think anyone has ever wanted to go to the Browns, but Colin Kaepernick does, so good on him, I guess. But, yeah, I mean, I think the AFC West, especially AFC West and the AFC South, are really kind of shaping up to be really competitive divisions. With the AFC West, the Raiders made a lot of moves. They got Bruce Irvin and Sean Smith and a couple of offensive linemen, which really, I think, will...
I'm nervous.
Yeah, I think they're the contender. And I think at this point, with the moves that the Chargers made and the Raiders made, and even the Chiefs made a couple moves. I mean, more was re-signing than anything. They got Tom Bahali back, which is really big.
That's important.
I think that the Broncos, who just are coming off a Super Bowl, have a chance to be the last place team in that division.
Yeah, I mean, it's possible. I think the Raiders actually might win it. And it's sad to say as a Charger fan, but Derek Carr, I think that the Raiders and the Chargers both have a good chance, but I think the Raiders have a good young offense, and if they could maybe get a running back in there, which there's still some available. I mean, shaping up. I mean, they have Khalil Mack.
Yeah, they have Khalil Mack. And I hear Eric Weddle might be interested in going there.
Yeah, supposedly he's narrowed down to 3 teams. The Steelers could be replacement. A long time replacement of Troy Polamalu.
Yeah,
hair to beard.
Yeah.
And then he also said the Raiders, and the third team I want to say was the Giants, but I'm not sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, all those would be good fits for him, but if somehow the Raiders could get him, I think that'd be huge.
Charles Woodson replacement.
If you could have a running back in there that's, maybe Arian Foster. I mean, he's out there. And I think he's still one of the best running backs in the league, but I guess
if he stays healthy.
Yeah, if he can stay healthy. But yeah, back to the Broncos. I mean, the only move they've really made to help them, other than franchising Von Miller, is they traded for Mark Sanchez, and I mean, that's really nothing special. He's had an okay career, but I mean, they were really banking on Brock Osweiler staying with them, and I think that caught just about everyone off guard when he left. So I guess we can kind of move on with that topic and talk about Brock Osweiler going on to the Texans. What do you think about that?
I actually read a story today on Bleacher Report saying that he left because he got benched for the playoffs and they let Peyton Manning play. I understand that, but at the same time, it was Peyton Manning. Did you really think they were going to sit him out for the playoffs?
Yeah, I mean, I think it goes both ways, but the thing about it is when Brock Osweiler was in for the Broncos, he wasn't playing poorly,
No.
He was playing pretty well. I think, he threw for over 300 yards in one game against the Steelers.
Yeah, the only bad game was against the Chargers in the last game of the season.
Yeah, I mean, he beat the Patriots. I mean, I'm not saying it was just him, but
he game managed.
Yeah, and
held it together.
That's definitely important.
Which is possible what Mark Sanchez did when he had the Jets defense for those 2 AFC Championship runs. He just managed the offense. He didn't have to do anything special,
right.
Which is exactly what Peyton Manning did.
Yeah, and I mean, I think when it comes down to Brock Osweiler, I think a lot of people are trying to paint this as he was mad at the Broncos. I don't think it was that. I just think that the Texans needed a quarterback that bad that they gave him ridiculous money that he did not deserve, and now he's on the Texans because how could you turn it down?
He got $72 million for 4 years. He's only thrown 305 passes in his career.
Yeah, exactly. They threw crazy money at him just because, they're
taking a chance.
Yeah,
pretty much.
I mean, I can see where they're coming from because, one, the Texans have been just terrible with the quarterback over the past few years, and two, the NFL itself is running low on quarterbacks. There's not many free agent quarterbacks, and the ones in the draft aren't good either. I mean, they're okay, but they're not anything special.
Teams won't get rid of their franchise quarterbacks.
Exactly.
That's the thing. You're never going to get great free agent quarterbacks because teams won't get rid of them.
Right. Yeah. So I mean, it makes sense that they're doing that. So, a good move for the Texans rather. Kind of sucks for the Broncos, but they did overpay a little bit, the Texans. So we'll see how that works out. I guess it's all time will tell. If they end up having a good season with him, then maybe things will shape up. But we'll have to see.
Which is an interesting topic because the AFC South possibly was the worst division.
Yeah.
And now could be a competitive one.
Yeah. I mean, if you move on, the Texans also signed Lamar Miller, who I think is a solid running back, but he's not. Yeah. He's not anything crazy. He hasn't stepped up to be really a bona fide only running back on the Dolphins. So We'll see how it works with the Texans. The Jaguars made a lot of moves. They signed Chris Ivory from the Jets. They signed Malik Jackson from the Broncos, another loss for the Broncos. And then they signed corner Prince Amukamara from the Giants. So they really are kind of upgrading everything there. And I think that they have some potential now because you get a running back in there to complement TJ Yeldon. That's 2 good running backs. You have a speed back, power back.
Bruiser, yeah.
Yeah. And then you have Allen Robinson, Allen Hurns, Julius Thomas, and Blake Bortles is a solid quarterback. So I think that offense could be really, really be something special. And then the defense, I mean, they're making moves. I mean, I can see them being okay. And, sometimes you only need an okay defense.
Right. I mean, they score a lot of points, surprisingly. The Jaguars, their offense is high-powered.
Yeah, and in the case of the Broncos last year, it's different where the defense carries the team, but sometimes an offense can carry the team. Right. It's not always going to be, bulletproof, but it can happen. So.
And they have Malik Jackson. Dante Fowler is going to come back from his injury.
Yeah, so I think they could be a solid team. The Titans, they traded for DeMarco Murray from the Eagles, which I thought was kind of a big move, being that 2 seasons ago he was the lead rusher in the NFL. Last year he was kind of a bust with the Eagles, and I don't know if that was the system or him, but I think it was the system. I think they got him. The Titans got him, and that's really going to change a lot for them because their offense has not been good in the past few years.
Yeah, I agree. I think the Chip Kelly system was what ruined it.
Yeah.
I mean, he had a great offensive line in Dallas, which definitely helped his rushing leading stats, but I was surprised by the Titans move. I didn't think they're always under the radar. They don't really do much. Maybe they're actually trying to rebuild now. Yeah,
and I mean, I think the thing about this division now is it's the same thing. I mean, if you told me 2 years ago that the Colts could potentially be a last place team, I'd say you're stupid. That division is terrible other than the Colts. But the Colts have chosen to not make any upgrades whatsoever to their offensive line, and that's been what's their main struggle. So Andrew Luck can only get you so far. I mean, Andrew Luck's a great quarterback, but if he has no protection, you see it with other teams. You see it with the Patriots. When Tom Brady doesn't have protection, he doesn't survive. And that's, I mean,
you got to protect your star.
And that's the thing. I mean, when I'm going through these lists, I'm sitting here and I'm not mentioning any of the offensive linemen that are getting signed because people tend to overlook the offensive linemen. But I think that, it's important. I mean, offensive linemen are crazy important, and they get overlooked because, for whatever reason, I mean, I guess people don't realize, how important they are. If you're coming from an outsider's perspective, maybe you don't see it. But once you really get into the game, you know that these offensive linemen are important.
I mean, look at the Chargers. They had a terrible offensive line. They went 3-13.
Yeah, and they easily could have been at least a 500 team with. I mean, Phil Rivers is one of the best quarterbacks in the league. So
Detroit doesn't have an O-line, and Matt Stafford was sacked the most times last year.
Yeah, so
which forced Calvin Johnson to retire.
Yeah, that pretty much says it all right there. So yeah, that's kind of how the AFC South is shaping up. AFC North, really no moves. A couple of these divisions, a couple teams really haven't made any moves yet. I mean, there's still a lot of time left in the offseason.
I mean, Weddle might go to the Steelers. So
Weddle might go. That would be huge.
That'd be a big move.
That would be a big move, but I still think they would need to make a lot of changes on defense just because last year their defense was not very good.
No, it was awful. The secondary was terrible.
But we'll see if Weddle goes there. It'd be, I don't know. I don't feel like that would be his choice. Probably. I mean, I think the Raiders.
I'm thinking Oakland too.
Yeah, strictly because one, they're ready to win now, and two, just distance-wise, he doesn't have to move that far from San Diego.
Right, and he won't be, the star of the team, so he doesn't have to do crazy things the whole game.
Right.
So he can just kind of sit back and play his style of game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. So then we'll move on. We're just going to kind of run through each one because there's been so many moves over this past week, especially the first day was kind of crazy.
Yeah, it was insane.
I was a little overwhelmed. I mean, when you're like a major sports fan like us, you just kind of are like.
I feel like Adam Schefter. My phone just kept going off.
You're just like sitting there eating the popcorn and
taking it all in.
Taking it all in, yeah. So from the AFC East, Bills didn't do too much. They've lost a couple players actually. The Jets, even though they lost Chris Ivory, I thought that was going to be huge for them. They come in right after Chris Ivory leaves, and they sign Matt Forte. What do you think about that move?
I think he's a good veteran running back. They kept Bilal Powell, so maybe he can give him some tips and help him develop his game more. I think the big thing with the Jets is re-sign Ryan Fitzpatrick.
Yeah,
and they haven't done yet.
Yeah, and I think Matt Forte can be really good in that offense, right. But they need to have a quarterback who can at least manage a game like a Ryan Fitzpatrick.
Especially as a pass-catching running back.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing. I mean, Ryan Fitzpatrick, they're ready to win now if they can get a quarterback, but that's a big if. Like, that's the most important position on the field. You have to have a quarterback. And now, I mean, I hear that they're looking at RG3 maybe, maybe Kaepernick if he doesn't go to the Browns. But I don't know. I mean, Kaepernick first said he wanted to play with the Jets, and then he said he wanted to play with the Browns.
Supposedly the story is Kaepernick had a girlfriend that lived out in New York, so he wanted to jump ship and go across the whole country to play for the Jets.
Yeah.
I think Todd Bowles is a good coach, and he should draw more interest of these quarterbacks.
Yeah.
He's a defensive-minded coach, but Ryan Fitzpatrick set a Jets record with 31 touchdowns last year, so that has to be encouraging to other quarterbacks.
Definitely. I mean, I think he really stepped up, and that was his career year, and I think that's why maybe he's playing a little hard to get. I mean, and he's earned that. Definitely.
He's seeing how much money all these other quarterbacks are getting. Brock Osweiler just got $72 million.
Right. I mean, he should get more than Brock, if you ask me, because he's actually proven himself that he can lead an NFL team, whereas Brock Osweiler has 4 games.
Passes.
Yeah, that's nothing. I mean, and don't get me wrong, he's a good quarterback, but it's just you have to prove yourself before you get this kind of money. So
Fitzpatrick did choke in that final game he just needed to score that touchdown. They would have been in the playoffs, but you can't knock him for the year that he had.
Yeah, I mean, you can't expect them to get every move perfect along the way. And the Jets had that. I think earlier on in the season they had a losing streak that was, a couple games, 4 games or something like that, and then they ended up winning a bunch in a row. So maybe if they hadn't lost one back then it wouldn't have been an issue. I mean, when it comes down to the last game of the season, there's going to be pressure, and things like that are going to happen. But just moving on through the rest of the division, my Patriots really haven't done much. They signed wide receiver Chris Hogan from the Bills. I don't know
much about him.
I don't know much about him either. He seems like another Julian Edelman or Danny Amendola, which is not really what I think the Patriots need.
They need a deep threat.
Yeah, they need a deep threat. But I guess I don't make the decisions
can't really
around
question
here. So
Belichick.
yeah, I can't question him, but just I don't know. Just seems like a weird move, but is what it is. The Dolphins have made a couple upgrades, but I think a lot of these are they're big ifs. There's nothing you're like, that's a move that's going to put them in a position to win. They traded for Kiko Alonso, the linebacker, and cornerback Byron Maxwell from the Eagles, which are both interesting moves just because Kiko Alonso has been kind of inconsistent. He had a good year, then he had a bad year.
Gets injured a lot,
yeah.
too.
And same with Byron Maxwell. So, that should be interesting to see how that shapes up.
Seems to be a common theme with the Dolphins. They make moves, but they don't really do anything to put them ahead of everybody else in their division.
Yeah.
Which is tough when you have the Patriots in your division.
Mm-hmm.
But, I mean, they got Ndamukong Suh, and they signed him for a huge contract, and then, we have no money left.
Yeah. And then they signed Mario Williams, but my thing is they let Olivier Vernon go, who's 20, I think he's 25, and Mario Williams is in his 30s. So that, to me, doesn't make sense.
And he had an awful year last year. He didn't do much for the Bills.
Yeah. I mean, I think that was more of the system than anything. From what I've heard, he didn't play well in that system. But still, I mean, he didn't have a great year. And Olivier Vernon has kind of gone down a little bit, but I like my chances with a 25-year-old over someone in their 30s. And then I guess the Dolphins are they've given an offer sheet or, whatever to C.J. Anderson. So that means that the Broncos could then match that offer if they wanted to.
Right.
And I think that deadline's by today. So we'll see if that happens. I think that would be a good move for them. But I don't know, once again, how much of a difference he's going to make because he's not really, a number one where he's not like an Adrian Peterson where all you do is give the ball to him. You don't really have a second guy.
He worked well in the Broncos system because they had Ronnie Hillman to run alongside him.
Yeah.
And it wasn't him taking the workload all game long.
Right. So we'll have to see how that shapes up. So we'll move into the NFC. Try and make this a little quicker because I guess we're kind of getting closer to time a little bit. But there hasn't been as many moves. The NFC West has been pretty quiet. A couple re-signings, nothing huge. NFC South, same thing. The Buccaneers made a couple moves. They signed Brent Grimes, who was the corner from the Dolphins, and then defensive end Robert Ayers. So those are pretty good moves for a team that's trying to. Once again,
offense.
Yeah. Once again, they're like a Raiders. They're trying to make a push now, or maybe not the Titans. I don't think the Titans are ready just yet.
Not right
now. But, they're trying to make moves to set them up for, a future, I guess.
With Jameis Winston leading that team, he seems like he could do it. So.
Yeah, Jameis Winston's proved that he's been pretty good, so we'll see how that shapes up. The Saints signed Colby Fleener from the Colts, which I guess is kind of just whatever.
Yeah, it's all right.
He's no Jimmy Graham, but
no.
That's their own decision. The Falcons signed Mohamed Sanu, who he's not really any kind of big impact player,
Nothing
but
special.
He's a decent wide receiver. I guess he kind of takes the spot of Roddy White, who they released. They also signed Matt Schaub. I guess he'll be the backup quarterback. The Lions signed, moving on to the North, the Lions signed wide receiver Marvin Jones and D-tackle Haloti Ngata. They re-signed him. So
I guess Jones is a backup or a replacement for Calvin Johnson.
Yeah, that's what they said. I mean, I saw a post that was like, out goes Megatron, in comes Marvin Jones. The fact that that's even a comparison is just absurd, but people like to do weird things like that.
Especially in Detroit.
Yeah. The Bears made some moves. They signed Danny Trevathan, another player from the Broncos defense, So that's why we kind of think that they're not going to shape up to be what they were last year.
He was a big player.
Yeah.
I mean, you didn't notice it because Von Miller was so special, but Danny Trevathan did a lot for that team.
He was the leading tackler last year for the Broncos. So that's kind of a big move for the Bears. Hopefully they can maybe get back on track. And then, so the Giants made a lot of moves. The Giants re-signed Jason Pierre-Paul, and that was kind of interesting. I thought they might let him go just because of the whole, blowing 1.5 fingers off of his hand and
mangling his hand.
Yeah, and now he just plays with the club on his
the
hand.
Meat club.
Yeah, so we'll see how that shapes up. And then
that's important because it was only a 1-year deal, so we can see how it works out for him in that year and maybe extend it after that.
Yeah,
so we'll see how it plays out.
I think he has a chance to be a little bit better just coming off a second year of injury. They also signed corner Janoris Jenkins, signed D lineman Damon Harrison, and signed defensive end Olivier Vernon. So those were all pretty big moves for them. I thought Vernon was a really big one for them. And if they can somehow get Weddle in there, which is rumored to be one of his choice teams,
money at this point.
Yeah, I think that could be a big move for them. So
I think the Giants overpaid for a lot of these players, but it seems like in today's NFL you have to overpay to get them to come to your team.
Right.
And the Giants need to upgrade their defense more than anything on their field. So I think the overpaying works out in this case.
Right. Yeah, I agree. The Giants made some moves, and hopefully maybe they can, be better. I mean, that division was just terrible last year.
Yeah, they're always competitive with each other. No one ever really runs away with it seems like.
Yeah. I mean, the Cowboys and Redskins, we'll see. Redskins had a good year, not a good year, but an okay year last year, and they won in a really bad division, but we'll see how that shapes up. And then finally, the Eagles, they signed quarterback Chase Daniel, who's been a backup for the Chiefs for quite some time. I think he went there because the new coach for the Eagles, I can't remember his name, but I think he
was the offensive coordinator for the Chiefs.
Yeah, so that makes a lot of sense for them, and I think he'll probably end up winning the job over Sam Bradford.
Supposedly he's very high on him and his skill set.
Yeah, so we'll see how that shapes up. And they also signed linebacker Nigel Bradham, or Bradham, I don't know how it's pronounced, and corner Leotis McKelvin. So Eagles are making moves too. Trying to
undo the doings of Chip Kelly.
Seriously, I mean, they pretty much traded away all their players that Chip Kelly brought in, except Sam Bradford, but everybody else.
We'll see about that, though.
So just to recap, maybe just give us what you think your winner is of the offseason thus far.
I think it's between the Jaguars, the Raiders, and the Giants. I think they all made big moves that really helped their team in needs that they had to have. I think my Chargers made good moves, but I don't think it's comparable to those three teams. So I think those teams could really make a push in their respective divisions, and maybe they can get a wild card or win it.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think just to be definitive, honestly, I think the Raiders and the Giants, I think whoever Weddle signs with, I don't think he's going to sign with the Steelers. If he for some reason does, then that kind of makes this point kind of moot. But if he signs with the Raiders or the Giants, whichever team gets him has had the biggest offseason to me. Right. I mean, I think the Raiders and Giants are pretty dead even right now. The Jaguars did make some moves, but I think they're still a little bit ways away. I think the Raiders are just there, and if they can get Weddle, that'll put him over the top because he is a game changer. He's that type of player. And I think, the Giants, same thing. They've made a lot of moves.
A lot of big moves they did.
So hopefully by the end of the day, we know where Weddle is because that's kind of been he's been pretty quiet thus far.
Right.
And I thought, he might go quick just because there was so much money being thrown around in the first couple days that you thought maybe.
I thought he'd go somewhere in the first or second day at least.
Yeah. So that's that. I mean, so that pretty much wraps up the NFL talk. We're getting pretty close to time, so I guess we'll just wrap it up. It's been pretty much an NFL-heavy episode, but it's been a huge week in the NFL.
And they never have an off-season, to be honest. So.
Yeah, and not too much going on in baseball, spring training, all that stuff. NBA, it is what it is. College basketball is getting pretty hot and heavy right now. They just announced all the seeding and all that stuff. So we'll probably get into that next week. Next week we're gonna do probably an MLB preview just because the season's coming up. We might have a special guest. I don't know. We might see if we can get someone in here that knows something about baseball. But for now, we'll wrap it up here. Once again, guys, if you listen to us on SoundCloud, please like the SoundCloud page. We're gonna have a YouTube channel because this is video now. If you're watching us, please like this video, subscribe to our channel, and
comment things if you want us to talk about certain topics.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, if you have any ideas, or maybe if you don't like the video, maybe if you want us to do something differently, we're open to changes. And so just if you want to hear anything in particular, let us know. But for now, I guess we'll be talking to you next week.